Now, no video game launches in a 100% perfect state, and while publishers often take advantage of modern gaming's ability to update games via the internet to fix incomplete titles when they're on the market, it can also allow savvy developers to further improve already great games post-launch. But then there are those games which end up lacking features widely expected to be in there by the fanbase, which is a crushing realization that is sometimes made even worse once the developers open their mouths and put their foot straight in it further. So let's have a chat about them. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 insane reasons that video games were missing features. Number 10. Removing weapons for historical accuracy, only to then sell them as DLC. Dynasty Warriors 9. Now, I don't know if you know this about me, but I quite like myself a Dynasty Warriors title, or 50 of them. It's probably about as many as been released. I've got every single one. I've got all the expansions, Orochi Warriors, the Gundam Warriors. I've got the ones that were basically like them with different skins. But I hated Dynasty Warriors 9. Boo! Boo! And Dynasty Warriors 9 Empires. Ew, gross. Ugh. But anyway, back on track. Shortly before Dynasty Warriors 9 was released, it was revealed that some of the series' more fun and interesting weapons were being removed, with the producer behind the series claiming that this was done for the sake of realism. I'm sorry, what? Realism? What? While Dynasty Warriors is based very loosely on historical fact, is anyone really playing these games for watertight historical authenticity? Not a damn chance, my mate. And to rub salt in the wound, a few months after, the developers revealed that they were going to sell the aforementioned removed weapons back to players in the form of paid DLC because, well, selling a complete game to players up front is apparently too much of an arse these days. With critical and fan response to the game already in the toilet, this did nothing to calm those who felt shortchanged by the thoroughly lackluster Dynasty Warriors 9. Striving for realism in a series like this was just silly, right? But it becomes downright insulting when it's revealed to be a bold-faced, cash-grabbing lie. Number 9. No offline mode because of accessibility. Redfall. It's become a frustratingly common trend over the past decade for AAA games in particular to have online-only requirements, meaning that there's no way to play them without an internet connection. For multiplayer-only online games, this does actually make a bit of sense, but for games that can also be played solo, well, it's almost always an anti-consumer move enacted under the guise of preventing piracy, even if it leaves paying customers unable to play said games if either the servers go down or their own internet connection plays up. And last year's flop, FPS Redfall, ruffled a lot of feathers prior to launch when it was revealed that despite the game being playable entirely solo, it would require a permanent internet connection. But developer Arcane Austin didn't merely throw out the piracy line, they claimed that forcing players to be online to play the game was actually part of an attempt to make the game more accessible. Basically, by being permanently connected to the Redfall servers, players would constantly transmit game data to Arcane about what is and isn't working gameplay-wise, allowing them to then tweak parts of the game if, say, too many players are struggling and getting killed. But given that countless games manage such data reporting without requiring players to be always online, it's pretty pathetic reasoning, effectively using the shield of accessibility to try and justify pretty rubbish business practices. To Arcane's mild credit, though, they did finally add an offline mode more than a year after launch, albeit once most of the players had long since moved on from the game. Number 8. Adding female characters would double the work. Assassin's Creed Unity. Now, many Assassin's Creed fans have been asking Ubisoft to introduce a playable female lead for years, and when the subject once again came up ahead of Assassin's Creed Unity's release, the studio claimed that they decided not to include a playable female character because it would have doubled the work. One of the Ubisoft technical directors noted that giving players the option of playing as a woman would have required thousands of new skeletal animations to be created. Yet, for many players, this excuse didn't really cut it. It felt like a soft, pretty lame duck answer coming from a studio with resources as vast as Ubisoft, a weak cop-out to try and avoid ruffling feathers. After all, it was revealed in recent years that Ubisoft higher-ups tried to suppress the presence of female characters in the series, likely amid the misguided beliefs that games with female protagonists don't sell. Granted, in the case of Unity, Ubisoft evidently had trouble delivering basically a functional game with just one playable character, but at least from the next game onward, Assassin's Creed finally began introducing playable female leads. Number 7. No cloud saves to prevent cheating. Splatoon 2. The ability to back up your game saves in the cloud is basically just expected nowadays, so many fans were taken aback when Nintendo announced that Splatoon 2 wouldn't feature cloud save functionality at all. Now, the reasoning was that due to online multiplayer data being stored client-side rather than server-side, it would potentially allow players to abuse cloud saves in order to manipulate their online rankings, in turn unbalancing the entire game. Even ignoring how absurd it is that a video game released in 2007 to store multiplayer data on the player's multiplayer system, it was a lousy excuse on the part of Nintendo, given that cheaters had an absolute field day with Splatoon 2 regardless from the very first day it launched. Preventing cloud saves did basically nothing to combat this, and only punished those who wanted to secure their data. Thankfully, Nintendo did at least hear the vocal outcry as Splatoon 3 introduced cloud saves for offline play while storing all multiplayer data on Nintendo's own servers. Number 6. 30 FPS on Xbox was a creative choice. Starfield. There was a huge wave of disappointment when Bethesda confirmed that the Xbox versions of Starfield would be locked to 30 FPS, and even more so when Xbox boss Phil Spencer referred to this decision as a creative choice. What possible creative choice could there be to willfully limit a game's frame rate, especially when PC offers a totally free-flowing alternative? What could the creative choice even be here? In reality, this was more clumsy wording on Spencer's part than anything else. He probably should have called it a technical decision, because the phrasing creative choice implies that there was a specific reason for it outside of the Xbox hardware limitations. Failing to hit 60 FPS even on the beefy Xbox Series X is one thing, but to shift conversation away from the systems aren't powerful enough to accommodate it towards this was a creative decision is bizarre, awkward messaging. Naturally, it didn't go down well with fans at all, who saw straight through this. Number 5. No Battle Frontier because kids have short attention spans. Pokémon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. When Pokémon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire were released in 2014, many fans complained about the absence of the fan-favourite Battle Frontier, a special battle arena that was introduced back in Pokémon Emerald. In an interview shortly after the game's release, the producer of the game stated that Battle Frontier was removed because the team believed that only a small number of players would actually appreciate it and actively play it. More to the point, they added that modern Pokémon players have shorter attention spans and get frustrated more easily with challenging content, so the decision was made to cut it entirely. Given that one of the primary criticisms of contemporary Pokémon games is that Game Freak has made them easy and accessible to a fault, there are a great many fans disappointed that a much-loved feature has been cleaved away so unceremoniously. To complain that young'uns are shying away from difficulty is, it's definitely a take, alright. Number 4. No female protagonists because players will try to look up their skirts. Every Team Ico game. While something as basic as female representation in video games is so much more than a mere feature, Team Ico leader Fumito Ueda nevertheless revealed an utterly bewildering, if not downright gross reason for refusing to develop a game with a female protagonist. In a 2010 Q&A to promote The Last Guardian, Ueda was asked why Ico, Shadow of the Colossus, and The Last Guardian all featured male leads, and gave the dubious reply that girls wear skirts. Ueda elaborated that he considered making The Last Guardian's main character a woman, but decided against it for 2 reasons. Firstly, they wear skirts, and given the climbing involved, there was the potential for pervy players to look up said skirts. And secondly, Ueda surmised that given all the climbing, a male character would have more grip. Naturally, this logic was widely mocked by fans because, of course, it is impossible for a female lead to simply not wear a skirt and maybe hit the gym a little. I don't know, utterly baffling, right? Utterly baffling. Number 3, Dolby Surround would have made players sit through another logo. Kirby Air Ride. Another weird Nintendo decision now, albeit one that is actually pretty hilarious in retrospect. 2003's cult fave racing game Kirby Air Ride was originally intended to have Dolby Surround support, but game director Masahiro Sakurai recently revealed that he nixed it for one simple yet wildly unexpected reason. He didn't want to make players sit through another vanity logo at the start of the game. Because Dolby Surround support would have required the Dolby logo to appear upon boot up for a few seconds, in turn making players wait a little longer to get into the game proper, Sakurai surmised that it just wasn't worth it. Now, audiophiles might disagree, but it's nevertheless tough not to respect Sakurai's commitment to not wasting the time of his customers. As he himself put it, I feel very sorry for making the user wait. If you take 1 second from each user, that means that you'll be taking 10,000 seconds from 10,000 people. The more this repeats over the years, the more time you will cause players to lose. I mean, he's got a point, but come on. Number 2, the game isn't balanced for lean. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. Shortly before the release of Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, Infinity Ward confirmed that the PC version of the game would strangely lack a feature that fans had quite reasonably come to expect, the ability to lean. In an online chat following the announcement, an understandably miffed fan asked the team why they removed such a basic function that's been a staple of the PC releases ever since the series' inception. At this point, one of the game's designers, Mackie McCandlish, made the legendary, instantly meme-worthy response that Modern Warfare 2 is not balanced for lean. Players were both baffled and amused at such an odd explanation for lean being removed from the game, when in reality McCandlish was likely trying to curtly explain that lean was removed from the PC release for the sake of parity with the console versions, in order to ensure that PC players didn't get an unfair advantage while playing online. All the same, 15 years on, Call of Duty fans still fondly bring this poorly thought out turn of phrase every chance they possibly get. And number 1, no overlap map to keep combat and navigation separate. Diablo 4. One of the chief complaints about Diablo 4 leading up to release was Blizzard's peculiar decision to remove one of the series' mainstay features, the overlay map. The overlay map allows players to display a transparent version of the game map on top of the screen during play, a simple but brilliant accessibility feature which makes multitasking while playing so much easier. But Diablo 4 ditched the feature altogether, and when Blizzard were quizzed about this odd choice during a pre-release livestream, game director Joe Shelley gave a dissatisfyingly wishy-washy response. The murky rationale? Well, that the development team wanted to keep the combat and navigation systems separate, basically in an attempt to stop players from keeping the overlap map on the entire time. And so it was tossed out entirely and replaced with the wildly inferior mini-map instead. Now, options are a good thing, Blizzard, so why take away something which the fan base has been so vocally fond of and reliant upon throughout the entire series' history? And there we go, my friends. Those were 10 insane reasons that video games were missing features. I hope you enjoyed that, and please let me know what you thought about it down in the comments section below. As always, I've been Jules. You can go follow me over on Instagram, where it's @RetroJ, but the O is a 0, and I hope to speak to you soon. Take care of yourself. Big love. Bye-bye.